Welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steven. It is time for the Week 15 running back rankings. That's right, we're in the playoffs, folks. Congratulations, most likely. If not, that might mean that you have a Week 18 championship, and don't worry, I will be here for you if that is the case. Then we'll look at some DFS stuff throughout the playoffs, maybe slow things down, start to get ready for draft season, etc. So if you're not into draft season, as a reminder here, I do cover that. So maybe once your fantasy season is done, if you have no interest in that, turn off the notifications and then turn them on in July or whenever you're prepared to come back, because I will probably already be here looking at draft fantasy football draft stuff at that point in time. If I didn't make it clear, I was talking about the NFL draft. I do cover that in a few months from now. So there is that little announcement. Of course, we're going to go through quite a few running backs, although this should be a quicker video. I'm not going to go into too much detail on a whole lot of them. Just didn't seem like I really had to. A lot of it seems pretty straightforward at the running back until we get to a certain point, at which point I think it's kind of just going to be who do you want to trust. And so I'll give you a little bit of information on those guys. We will, of course, in just a short bit, recap the Week 14 lobs, fades, as well as how I did with my DFS plays. At the end of the video, there will be DFS plays, and I will be here for eternity on YouTube for the rest of the week. This video is coming out Thursday morning. This evening, before the game, 2 hours prior to kickoff, I will be live for any of your start-sit questions. I am most likely going to end up coming live on Friday evening for any start-sit questions while I go over and update the rankings. And then Saturday we have games, so I will be live 2 hours prior to the games on Saturday, and Sunday, as always, I will be live 3 hours prior to kickoff then. So a quick reminder, there's a lot of injuries going on this week. It is only Wednesday, so hopefully a lot of them are nothing, but with the games being staggered a little bit more than usual with those Saturday games especially, it's important to remember that if you have somebody go in here on Thursday, and then the same will be true on Saturday, you put those guys into your running back or your wide receiver slots. Keep that flex spot open for as long as possible, because that is where you are, most flexible, in case of an emergency, of course. So with that, let's now recap how we did last week for the DFS buys. I said paying up for Saquon Barkley at $7,200 would work, gave you a little bit of a discount over Kamara and McCaffrey, and I said that it could still very much pay off, and that it might even be a bit of a contrarian play. Saquon finished 4th on the week, and he finished higher than both Kamara and McCaffrey, so I think he got I don't know if it was value for the money there or whatever, but you got the 4th highest guy, and he beat out a couple of players who cost more. So I think that was probably pretty good. And then for a good price, I thought Jahmyr Gibbs at $6,600, and both Keaton Mitchell and Roschon Johnson at $4,900 feel like solid gambles. Jahmyr Gibbs at $6,600 finished 14th on the week in full PPR, so I don't know, that was probably all right, not too shabby. And then Keaton Mitchell and Roschon Johnson were not worth the gamble. And for a big tournament long shot and or contrarian play, I said that even if Derrick Henry plays, that was still going to be most likely the type of game where Tyjae Spears would see a good amount of work. And if you were looking to save a few $100 more than some of those other guys that I said to maybe take a gamble on, that at $4,600, Tyjae Spears could also be worth a gamble. And he finished 13th on the week, finished better than Jahmyr Gibbs at $6,600 there. So that was a good value if anybody went with him. Then for my fades, I gave you Joe Mixon and Josh Jacobs. Joe Mixon finished 7th on the week. That did not go so well. And Josh Jacobs finished 41st on the week. He did get injured late, but I'm still going to take the victory here because he played for a lot of the game, and he wasn't tracking to have a good game. Then, obviously, then for the love 'em, I gave you Raheem Mostert and Alexander Mattison. Mostert finished 4th on the week, so that was good. And I'm going to take the victory on Alexander Mattison. He did get injured, so he did end up 38th at the running back position on the week for half PPR scoring. But he was running quite well. He had 6.6 yards per carry before he got injured. He was tracking to have a bigger game. So, once again, the logic seemingly was there, and Alexander Mattison came through on that end. So now let's get on to the Week 15 running back rankings. Please don't forget to drop a like on the video. It helps very, very much. And let's start off with this first tier of running backs that I have up here. Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Kyren Williams, Bijan Robinson, my top 4 running backs. There is zero chance in the world that I am not playing any of these guys. And Kyren Williams, I almost was going to get ranked higher than Alvin Kamara, very close. Maybe I'll put him up at second. I don't know. Probably shouldn't really matter. If you have those 3, then you should be starting all 3 almost certainly. Bijan Robinson just making it into this tier because he's going up against Carolina. It's an amazing matchup, and I can't imagine sitting him this week. So let's move on to my second tier, which is also going to be a tight little 4-banger. We got Rashad White at 5. Running back 5. Then Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, and Travis Etienne to wrap this tier up. And we're just basically still in must-start territory with these guys. That's as simple as it gets. If you have them, you're playing them. But I do see a bit of a drop-off between this tier and the other one. So just want to make that clear. Let's move on to my third tier of running backs. From running backs 9 through 17, we have Raheem Mostert, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Breece Hall, Zach Moss, and Joe Mixon to wrap that tier up at running back 17. So just looking at those first 4 running backs, we have the Miami duo and the Detroit duo both in there, and I am high on all of them except for Jahmyr Gibbs compared to the ECR, Expert Consensus Ranking from Fantasy Pros website. And not much is new, and to be frank, it really hasn't hurt me most of the time being high on Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, David Montgomery. The only one of these guys that I'm not high on is Jahmyr Gibbs, who is ranked 11th on the ECR 10. I have him at 11, so right there. Both of these teams, Detroit and Miami, are favored in their matchups, and that is primarily the reason that I have the primary backs, the more ground backs, Raheem Mostert and David Montgomery, ranked higher than their counterparts in their backfields. That said, I have a feeling, especially if Tyreek Hill is out, but even assuming that he's just limited in this game, which I think is highly likely, that I have a feeling that Devon Achane could have another monster game this week. That is why he is a love for me. He could get utilized more. He could get utilized differently. And teams target their running backs at a high rate against the New York Jets, their opponent this week. They allow the 4th most targets to the running back position against their defense out of all the teams in the league, and so that is why I love Devon Achane this week. I like the matchup. Once again, you can see I didn't end up putting asterisk next to everybody that's injured. I got him asterisked. It did come up with an injury today on Wednesday, so we'll see how that trends throughout the week. And additionally, I do want to add here, if there were any concern that you might be sitting Jahmyr Gibbs, which I don't think that you're even thinking about doing, I would have given him a love tag as well, because an almost identical statement could be made for Jahmyr Gibbs as the argument statement that I just made for Devon Achane. Then we've got Austin Eckler. You're starting him. You got Derrick Henry. You're starting him. We got Breece Hall. You're starting him. You got Zach Moss. They're going up against Pittsburgh. You're probably starting him. It's a good matchup. And you have Joe Mixon here, running back 17. You're starting him. This is kind of a cheap fade that I am using here for Joe Mixon because, like I just said, you're starting him. You probably are at least. But Minnesota is a very tough running back matchup, so just limit your expectations as the projections would suggest here on the higher end of the expected range. It might not be a big day, and how can you react to that kind of information? Because a lot of times you hear, well, you're starting him, but he's going to be limited. So just keep... This is how you react to when analysts say that. You have a decision to make at your flex spot, whether you put him in your flex or you put him in one of your wide receiver or running back spots because they're playing earlier in the week than somebody else. Doesn't matter. You have a decision to make between 2, 3 guys, whatever. You, in this instance, might want to shoot for that ceiling compared to taking the safer floor kind of guy. This should be entered into that decision, the fact that you're like, Joe Mixon's probably not going to give me a pop week. So if between these 2 guys that you're thinking about, just take the guy with the higher ceiling or the more likely ceiling, whichever route you want to go there, compared to the safer floor, if that's the type of decision that you're even looking at, of course. You can't always act on it. Let's move on to my 4th tier of running backs, which is another smaller tier here, going from DeAndre Swift to Jerome Ford. So, this is good overall for the first few tiers here. I have them kind of tight and compact. That means there's some confidence in where I have them ranked. And for DeAndre Swift at running back 18, it's a very good matchup going up against Seattle Seahawks. He has sucked as of late, but I think that you have to give him some of your trust in what could be one of his bigger days of the season. Then for Javonte Williams, I have these two kind of flipped compared to the current ranking for the ECR, and if you're deciding between Swift and him, then I think that Javonte Williams is the safer play. He has the better floor. Overall, though, I am sticking with the matchup gauge here, just to the left of his name, the red compared to the blue. That's a good thing, by the way. White is going to be neutral wherever you see things highlighted in white. It's just the matchup gauge, the slightly higher ceiling here for DeAndre Swift. I want to take that shot in a week where I'm cautiously optimistic for him. But once again, your favorite in your matchup or something, just go right ahead, take the safer play. Nothing wrong with that. Ezekiel Elliott, I have ranked to 20th. James Cook, 21st. Jerome Ford, 22nd. And I think that all of them, you should feel comfortable playing them where I currently have them ranked. And let's move on to my 5th tier of running backs. And in this tier, we're going to start from a place of despair with some of these running backs, and we're going to move into an area of hope that's going to bring in some more hope with the 6th tier. Just hope that maybe we're a little less confident in. But to start off, we have Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Ken Walker, Chuba Hubbard, James Conner from running backs 23 through 27. They're the top 5 in this tier. And these are running backs that are more so in that place of despair. I'm not super excited to be playing them, but I am a little bit concerned about especially some of them, like Najee Harris, Jalen Warren. Maybe I'm not super excited about, but I'm also not very concerned about them. But once we get to Kenneth Walker, my concernometer is very, very high against Philadelphia here. Then you got Chuba Hubbard against Atlanta. Very tough matchup, almost as tough as Philadelphia, who's the worst matchup for running backs. James Conner, right along the same boat here, somewhere in between Atlanta and Philadelphia, and Atlanta's like the 4th worst matchup. Something like that is how it goes. So, I am fading Ken Walker here, but I actually think that there is a decent chance that he could plop into the end zone once or twice, and you can see that with the higher end of the expected range for his rankings here, and that is why I do have him above the other two in this, in my rankings. But still, there's also a good chance that he has less than 5 fantasy points in this week, and Zach Charbonnet gets more work than him in this game. That's also very, very possible, so he is a risky play. Then we've got Keaton Mitchell here at running back 28, who I am toying with the idea of, and you know what, screw it. We're actually just going to move him up ahead of Ken Walker here. So we're going to move him up to my running back 25, and move these guys down just a little bit. I like the ceiling shot of Keaton Mitchell, and I really feel like he might have as safe of a floor as these guys as well. So there that change is. That's going to bring us on to running back 29 then with Deonta Foreman, and I'm also toying with the idea of ranking him higher than Chuba Hubbard and James Conner. I don't think I would bring him quite above Kenneth Walker there, but Cleveland, the opponent for Chicago this week, is dealing with quite a few injuries right now, and I think it's clear that Deonta Foreman is the RB1 in Chicago. The part of what's holding me a little bit back from ranking him too much higher is the thought that, there's a risk that last week was like a game plan thing, and Deonta Foreman's not the RB1 this week. So I don't know that that's a guarantee, although I'm pretty confident in the fact that he is. Then at running back 30, we have Ty Chandler. It's a solid matchup. Of course, assuming Madison's out, we'll go over the guys who I do not have currently ranked who could potentially still play this week, which would obviously change some of these rankings, Ty Chandler being one of those guys. But if he's the guy with the backfield work, he projects pretty well, and so I like it in a decent matchup against Cincinnati. And then Aaron Jones I have at running back 31, and if he is returning this week, to be honest, maybe I shouldn't have ranked him. I guess for some reason, and maybe I did read something, I am confident about him returning this week, and I just stuck with that, assuming that there is a reason behind it. And if he does return, I'm not fully confident in where I have him parked right now at running back 31. And the news surrounding his health, any kind of specifics that we may get, would heavily impact how willing I am to trust him, how well he does in practice or how much he practices this week. All those little factors that we can take into account are going to impact his ranking up or down from here. He's sort of in between tiers right now. I'm not sure if he should have been in the tier that I have below this or in this tier, which is why you see a little bit of an off color, just to remind me of that. But let's move on to my 6th tier. So we moved into the area of hope. One of them, we already moved that hope up. Deonta Foreman, Ty Chandler, Aaron Jones. I think that there is some hope for those guys to have good games. And then that's going to bring us into this, my 6th tier here, the tier of hope. Devin Singletary down here. If Nico Collins and Stroud play this weekend, then I'll be higher on Singletary, but I'm not very confident that this offense will be able to get much rolling at all. Personally, I feel more comfortable with a few of the mystery boxes, which was what some of them are, that I have ranked higher than him. But it's understandable that you may not agree, and maybe you feel that I am too low on Devin Singletary. He should be up ahead of Antonio Gibson. I get it. It's going to bring us down to my last tier here, my tier 7, the tier of desperate hope. We went through some desperation, we got through some hope, and now we're into desperate hope. Running back 40, I've got Zach Charbonnet, and he gets a lob tag from me. Outside of the must-start guys this week, let's say those first 3 tiers of mine, so obviously the first 2 tiers were must-starts, but tier 3 was essentially must-start. There wasn't much for me to love outside of that. I'm not loving a whole lot. I didn't want to take 2 or 3 gimmies at one position this week, taking another love from those top 3 tiers. And then I have the fade of, Joe Mixon in there, which felt like a bit of a gimme. So I didn't want to have like 3 of my 4 loves and fades being like, well, yeah, no crap that you love them or you're fading them. We don't want that around here. So it took me to come all the way down here to get you a love at running back 40 with Zach Charbonnet. And if you're having to wing it at the running back position this week, Charbonnet has a chance to be game planned and or game flowed into the lineup this week. Very possible against Philadelphia. And so in either circumstance, obviously then Zach Charbonnet could get some more work, and that could be good. Kind of like a Tyjae Spears type of upside that we saw pay off last week. Why that might not matter is the fact that this offense just doesn't seem to care to throw to the running back position at all. I would say less so than Tennessee, even especially when Tyjae Spears is out there. I don't know that it matters that Zach Charbonnet brings that element to this offense, the receiving work, at least not enough to make him a better option to take a risk on than where I currently have him ranked, and that's why he is in that tier and ranked that low. If I had more confidence in him giving more receptions, I would be higher on him. And we got Chase Brown, Tyjae Spears, Kareem Hunt, Tyler Algier, all also in this same tier. That basically, these are the running backs that I'm still like, I don't think my week is completely over if I'm having to play them. I do think that there is a sliver of hope. Tyjae Spears, I don't really think it's going to be his week against Houston, but you never know. And then Tyler Algier, I do think that there's a chance that he could have a big week. It hasn't happened too many times, but you never know against Carolina there. Then players I have not been ranking, do not currently have ranked are Isaiah Pacheco, Brian Robinson, Alexander Madison, Ramondre Stevenson, and Josh Jacobs, if those 5 weren't obvious from the names that we had and where they're ranked. Let's look at my DFS buys for Week 15. I'm going to give you Kyren Williams at $7,500. He's at a steep discount compared to the likes of Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara, and could very easily keep up with them this week, much like my the guy who I suggested last week, whoever that was, Saquon Barkley, I think. Then for a good price, I think also probably my contrarian play for you this week based on what he's done recently at 6,100 DK bucks. I think that DeAndre Swift would be worth putting into a lineup and hoping for that ceiling shot from him to differentiate your lineup, as well as, once again, I think being a decent price for the potential for him. Then for a big tournament long shot, I'm going to give you Zamir White at $4,400. I think that he could surprise. The Chargers are not a fantastic run defense, despite what some analysts seem to allude to. They're much improved compared to what they've been in recent history, but they can still be had in fantasy, and we know that the coach in Las Vegas wants to run the ball. Obviously, assuming that Josh Jacobs misses the game. Otherwise, don't mess with Zamir White. There we go. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate you all. I love you. And I'll be here on YouTube, so you can stop by at any time to see any rankings changes that are happening throughout the week. Peace out.